All in Sports Network. We love sports.
It is Tuesday, October 22nd, and this is All in Horns, brought to you by Rogue Sports Network. I'm Tanner Carlson, along with Jake Jimerson. And Jake, one thing that we have taken away thus far here early after the Texas Longhorns' first loss of the season is that Georgia fans are just a bunch of sickos. Our numbers have never been higher. Our interactions have never been more in-depth, and the comment section full of trash-talking Georgia Bulldog fans. Fine by me. Hey, we can take it. We're all in for it. Longhorn fans, if you want to jump in and start defending your team a little bit, we could use a little bit of help. But yeah, no, Georgia fans, bunch of just sickos just watching our misery and our immediate reaction show on Saturday. Go give that video a click, give it a view, give it a thumbs up, give it a comment, like, share, subscribe to our channel. We come out with these episodes Tuesday through Friday at noon, and then on Saturdays immediately following the game. Jake, we have a great show for the people today. We are going to have our final thoughts on the Texas-Georgia game. We're going to put a bow on it today, and then we're moving on to Vandy, just like the team already has. But we got some game notes from you, Jake. We're going to really dive deep into what we watch on second look, especially from the offense. We're not going to even really talk too much about the defense. There will be discussion on the defense, but this episode is going to be Quinn, and he's at a crossroads in his college career and where he's going to move forward this season for this Texas team, and where the offensive line stands as well. And then we also, Sark gave a presser on Monday. He also gave one immediately following the game on the post game, but we're going to be diving in and discussing what he talked about and what the media was asking him on Monday's presser. And then Jake, we've got your segment returning. Don't jump, Jake. And it is, I'll give the people a little bit of hint for those Georgia sickos that are probably tuning in today's episode. It's about Kirby Smart. And then just a little bit of perspective for Texas Longhorn fans as we move past this final or this first loss in the season. Remember, ladies and gentlemen, we had a loss last year, still made it to a 4-team playoff. There's 12 teams this year, and this was a better opponent that we lost to than last year. So still a lot of season left to be played. So just a little bit of perspective for those Longhorn fans. And then we may have time for a little bit of recruiting news. Jake, let's go ahead, dive into it. We have a jam-packed show today. Go ahead and just dive into some of those game notes that you made.
Yeah, well, first off, I've been in battle all day in the comments with some really tremendously stupid Georgia fans. I wish they would have been talking before the game because they were silent on X. They were silent on YouTube comments. They were not very confident, and that was very apparent. And now they're very loud and pumping their chests and saying they should have won 51-7, but where was that energy before? They seem to be melting down after not looking great against Mississippi State, but they played a good game, and we're going to dive into that. So congrats to them. And if any of you sickos are watching this, please leave a comment. It helps boost us. We appreciate your support greatly. But
with that being said,
I have watched through the game completely twice, and I've watched through the offense several times. One of my biggest takeaways was the offensive line wasn't good. It was also not near as bad as I thought it was when we were talking in our instant reaction, especially Kelvin Banks. The sack, or if you want to say two, that were supposedly given up by him were given up by Quinns. And that was kind of a reoccurring theme. Of the 7 sacks in this game, I think you would count 2, maybe 3 against the offensive line at most. There was a lot of opportunities for Quinn to step up in the pocket, or at times when there wasn't a sack, just to step into a throw and accept you're going to take a shot. And that just wasn't happening in this game. And we did talk about that in a little bit in the post-game reaction, but it was much more apparent when rewatching it, because quite frankly, I don't care how good your offensive line is. When you're playing a team like Georgia that has the talent and the NFL level players that they have in their front 7, you're not going to have a clean pocket like it's UTSA. That's just not how it's going to work when you're playing at Georgia.
No, you're exactly right, Jake. And something that we discussed as well is that the running game was non-existent last night or on Saturday, whenever we played this game. I think the team total was like 20 something yards, 26 yards or something like that from the running backs.
Wisner, I think, had 57 sack yardage. College rushing stats are always weird because of sack yards.
Right. But overall, not a great performance. Really, no one running back stood out. Jaden Blue, which we will discuss this probably a little bit later on in the show as well. 0 carries in the game. He did have like 7 receptions. He was effective out of the backfield. However, Sark mentioned it in his press conference as well, that's on him. He needs to get Blue more involved. What needs to happen for these running backs, Jake? Is this just a game-by-game basis of who is running back 1?
Yeah, I still think Jaden Blue is the most talented running back that's currently available on this roster. Georgia missed 7 tackles in this game. 3 of those missed tackles were forced by Jaden Blue, and that was in very limited touches. If I would put one thing on Sarkisian for this game, it would be not using Jaden Blue enough when Wisner just wasn't making guys miss. There were some running lanes there. The offensive line played much better in the second half in pass protection and in run blocking, and they did run the ball with some success in that third quarter. But there was also times where there was a hole and they just didn't see it. And that's something Wisner had been looking good, especially in the Oklahoma game. And that was just not there because there was multiple times where he left a lot of meat on the bone. And I wish that Jaden Blue would have got some of those carries in that first half just to see, because at least catching the ball in an open space, he was able to make some guys miss. He had one move that was really good where he ends up stiff arming the guy and getting past him and getting a first down. And obviously he has much better hands than Wisner. Not that that's saying much, but you can't get into this situation where Wisner's out there, it's a run, Blue's out there, and it's a pass. And Sarkisian did mention that specifically in his presser is he did criticize himself on that aspect, which I think was rightfully so. I think he maybe could have used the run game a little bit more early, but honestly, they were not getting anything when they were trying it early. But maybe the RPO game a little bit more early on and some quick passes is maybe the one thing I would change in that opening script.
It wasn't so much the lack of rushing attempts for me personally. And typically I'm very much, when you talk about balance, how many times are you running it? How many times are you passing it? Really against Georgia, that wasn't in my mind of like, I knew going into this game, Texas's most success was going to have to be on the quarterback and the wide receivers and in the passing game. I knew that going into the game. I was expecting a heavy passing game plan going into it, and it was a heavy passing game plan, but that was also because you fell behind so quickly and your offense wasn't really helping your defense and playing very complimentary. So it wasn't necessarily the amount of touches, it was who the touches were going to most. And again, it was excluding Jaden Blue from the running game entirely. So when he came out on the field, it was defense, pass, pass, pass. And there was immediately you took away half your playbook the moment Jaden Blue came into that game by not running him. And I think that's something that Sark was touching on as well. Let's go ahead and move to Quinn's performance. Let's break this down a little bit, Jake. Quinn has just seemed really slow on his progressions. He's predetermining pre-snap where he's going to go with the ball, and when that read isn't there, even whenever he's scrambling or stepping up in the pocket, he's hesitating on should I roll out to the left, should I roll out to the right, should I step up into the pocket, should I take this hit, am I avoiding this hit? And right now I think he has about a million different things going on in his brain, and he's overthinking every decision that he is making, and it's slowing down his progression. You can take a little bit longer of a time to make your progressions when you're playing UL Monroe, when you're playing UTSA, when you're playing those caliber of teams. When you're playing Georgia, those progressions need to happen faster. They need to move. Same thing with Oklahoma as well. And so that to me is where Quinn is in his game. It's right here, dude. It has nothing physically wrong with him. Some of the throws that he's making, he's aiming and he's trying to lead and he's trying to put touch on it and he's trying to have these certain different arm angle on his throws. Instead of backing out, 2-3 step drop, making his reads, first read isn't there, roll out a little bit, create some time, keep his eyes down the field, see if something opens up, and if nothing opens up, take 5 yards, slide, live for 2nd and 5.
Yeah, and not even necessarily roll out. Where is the Michigan Quinn? I went back and I looked at the Michigan offensive snaps. It looks like a completely different quarterback is playing, because several times there was pressure coming from that in the Georgia game. He got sacked by just either running outside of the pocket or just standing there and getting hit or fumbling the ball. In the Michigan game, he was stepping up, keeping his eyes downfield, getting through his progressions and finding someone open and hitting it. It looked like freshman Quinn compared to Quinn we've seen all year. And I don't know if it's because he's worried to get re-injured. It certainly looks that way when you just compare the last two games to the start of the season. And how about this? For passing efficiency ratings, these last two games for Quinn are two of his worst 6 games in his entire college career now.
Back-to-back
something's
weeks.
not right.
Yeah.
Something is not right. And I don't know if it's the injury. I don't know if it's a mental I definitely think there's a mental aspect to it coming off of the injury, but everything's slow. Is all of a sudden back to just being a first read quarterback. And he caused his offensive line to look much worse than they were. If I was grading in this game, I would probably say the offensive line was a C minus, maybe a C at best. The right side of the offensive line was bad. The left side of the offensive line in the center was fine. But Quinn is an F minus. That is not winning play. I mean, Texas will not make the playoff. They won't sniff the playoff. They will lose to A&M. They will more than likely lose to Arkansas, and even could lose to a Kentucky or a Vanderbilt if Quinn plays this way the rest of the year. And I hope he turns it around, but he has to get this thing turned around quickly.
Sark won't allow that to happen. Arch will play before that happens. And we've talked about it, Jake, and I think the discussion around Longhorn Nation, if you will, hell, even national news, national media is making this Quinn Arch comparison. I'm not even going to call it a quarterback controversy, because there's no controversy. Quinn has basically the first half of the Vanderbilt game to prove, hey, I'm this team's leader, I'm this team's quarterback, and I'm the quarterback that is right to make a postseason run, get this team to the postseason, and not only that, but make a run into the postseason to a national championship. He has one half of football to determine that, and it's against a Vanderbilt defense that he should be able to, if you are that caliber of quarterback, to do that against. Vanderbilt's good. I respect Vanderbilt's offense. Their defense is susceptible to a Quinn Ewers caliber of talent and quarterback for him to make big plays and for him to play at a Heisman level that he's supposed to be playing at on a regular week in and week out basis. If that first half looks anything like Oklahoma or Georgia, Arch gets the nod. Arch gets the nod, not just for the rest of the Vanderbilt game, for the remainder of the season. I think that that decision is here and now.
Yeah, I mean, we're going to get into it a little bit more later, but Quinn's a little bit of a crossroads right now, and I hate to say that, because I love Quinn Ewers. I want him to succeed, but he is hamstringing this offense right now. They cannot push the ball down the field. He's never been a great deep ball thrower when it comes to accuracy, but it's bad. I mean, it's freshman level bad right now. He is throwing off his back foot. He's severely underthrowing, or he completely just overthrows it. He's never setting his feet and this is all talking about the last two games.
Right.
But if he plays even average, they beat Georgia with how their defense was playing, which, to jump into the defense real quick, because I don't want to dog on Quinn too much, because I still think he can turn this around, because we've seen him look all of last year, look like a quarterback who's very capable of taking a team deep. Obviously, they did last year. And then all this year until these last two games, he's looked every bit the part of a Heisman-type quarterback. But coming back from the injury, it's just not been the same. But to talk about some good things, this defense dominated Georgia. Yes, Georgia left some meat off the bone. They had some drops. They had some missed opportunities. But they shut down the run after giving it up early. They were able to adjust, and ETN did not have much success on the ground in the second half and running the ball. If you look at the first half on the scoring drives for Georgia, and this is almost astonishing when you consider they scored 23 points. They averaged 3.6 yards a play on 23 points in the first half. That's disgusting from the Texas offense to
and it
allow
was
this to happen.
23-0 at halftime. It was a shutout.
15 possessions by Georgia in this game. One scoring drive over 35 yards. My biggest criticism of this defense right now would be the linebackers struggle a little bit against inside runs. They sometimes shoot the wrong gap, or they just get caught up from the double team from the center and guard or the guard and tackle to the linebacker level, and they get washed away in that. And that's why Texas had to bring an extra man down to help stop the run, because they realized that Georgia wasn't going to pass it against them. And which, by the way, this is the best Texas secondary we've had in at least over a decade, probably 15 years at minimum. Unfortunately, with Makuba being hurt, that could change things a little bit. They might have to do some shuffling. But going back on my second watch through, I was like, man, this defense is a championship level defense.
Absolutely.
They need championship level quarterback play to match it.
And to me, the offense was atrocious in all aspects, but on a second look and watching the view, as though, like for those who don't know, like you're playing Madden or college football, whenever you get to see that bird's eye view behind the quarterback and you get to see down the field and you get to see where the wide receivers are running their routes and what the play scheme is and what the coverage looks like, the amount of wide receivers that were coming open, if Quinn would have taken a half a beat longer to just go through his progressions.
He had the time.
And had the time to do it, but he rushed it or felt rushed because of the pressure from Georgia and the pressure that they had been putting on him prior to those plays. It's not the wide receivers, people. I don't care what anybody says, but from a top to bottom level, the offensive line, as we have mentioned, did not play up to the standard that we have set for them and that they've set for themselves and that Sark has set for them as well. They didn't play up to that standard, but the amount of pressure that was put on Quinn was a lot to do with Quinn either holding on to it, hesitating, second guessing his reads. And I would put this game, the offensive failure, I would put 75% on Quinn, 20% on running backs, and then the rest of the percentages go to the offensive line and the wide receivers. And I just can't put a lot of flack on the wide receivers. Looking at that angle of the game and watching the running backs or watching the wide receivers break free and break open right at the end of routes, or even they're just sitting there wide open and Quinn's just not throwing it to him and he's pump faking. There's even times where
Arch missed a wide open guy on 3rd and 6.
And that's great disguised by the defense. That's a great disguise by Georgia. I know Georgia's not just sitting there letting guys wide open, and these quarterbacks aren't, just in frozen mode, although it looked like that from time to time. I know they're disguising these coverages. I know Georgia's defense is doing more than just what we see. However, that to me was a huge part of the game. Jake, any final thoughts on actual game film, anything that you saw? Do you want to put a bow on that aspect of things? We still have Sark's press conference to talk about, and a lot of what Sark did talk about was addressing this Georgia game. So the topic of Texas-Georgia isn't really going away right now, but just in terms of what we have seen on the field on second watch-throughs and our final thoughts on it, cool, calm, collected reflection of this game. Any final thoughts? You want to put a bow on it?
Yeah, I still think Texas is a really good football team. The offense did play much better in the second half. They put up over 200 yards in that second half. They were able to get some things going. Unfortunately, in the fourth quarter, they stalled too much, but the offensive line played better in the second half. The first half was definitely not pretty from them. I am not worried about this offensive line right now. Unfortunately, my number one and number two worry is the running backs, because there's just not a lot of health there. We haven't heard on Wisner yet how he's doing. And I don't think there's a clear RB1 right now. You want Jaden Blue to be that guy, I think, because I do think he is the most talented. And then it's quarterback play. Quinn's got to turn this thing around now, or the leash at the very least. I still think Quinn should start next week. I'm not saying bench him now, but the leash is much, much shorter now. And that is really my biggest takeaway from this game, and not something I expected to be saying this season.
No, and I'm fully in support of if Quinn is going to struggle in this first half, and we see the same Quinn that came out early in Oklahoma and really the entirety of this Georgia game, I am perfectly comfortable and okay with Arch even getting first-team reps in practice leading up to Vandy, but Arch becoming the starter opening the third quarter against Vanderbilt. Jake, let's go ahead, jump into the Sark Presser from yesterday. He really started off giving some good points about really what Texas struggled most against with Georgia, and really his opening remarks right from the get-go. He talked about capitalizing off of turnovers, putting points on the board from turnovers where Georgia dominated Texas. Texas had 3 turnovers and couldn't convert any of those into points except for, 7 towards the end of the game. But Georgia scored 17 points off turnovers. Texas scored 7. Georgia had 4 turnovers. Texas had 3 turnovers. So it wasn't like there was a huge discrepancy in turnovers, but Georgia able to capitalize on that. He said that was a big part of it. And then in hand with the turnovers, Georgia's starting field position, Jake, was at the 47-yard line. Texas started the majority of their drives at the 23. That's what the average was. It felt like they were inside their 20 more times than not.
There was a big time punter difference in this game. And obviously Michael Kern wasn't in. You had a punter you never expected to have to play. And now, who knows when Kern's going to come back? We really haven't heard, but also Kern wasn't lighting the world on fire. He was doing well. But Georgia, I don't remember the punter's name, even though he was out there a lot. But he was a silent MVP of this game for Georgia. Because his punts, Pat McAfee had to be going crazy because he was just bombing punts on Texas. And with the way the offense was playing, it was huge in this game.
He would outkick his coverage from time to time. There was probably 2 or 3 times he outkicked the coverage, and Bolden had an opportunity to return it. And then on those returns, holdings or penalties by Texas to set them back.
One time a holding by a player who wasn't even on the team.
According to the referees. He did talk about
the refs cost Georgia almost. I'll get into that later.
You're getting to it. I'm leading up to it, Jake. I don't want you to give anything away. Oh, Kirby said some things. Effort versus execution, Jake. Texas, this is abysmal. This is inexcusable. This is when I saw these final numbers, I almost vomited. On third down, Texas was 2 of 15, 1 of 5 on fourth down. Sark talked about effort versus execution, and a lot of those third and shorts are effort plays. And then you also have to go out there and you have to execute as a player. So that's kind of him saying, look, if I'm calling the plays that are working and getting guys open, it comes down to the players executing on the field. I can only do so much from the sideline. He didn't say that. Obviously, he never would. Effort versus execution. That's the conversation to be had, though.
Yeah, to me, this stats quarterback play. There was a lot of 3rd and 5s, 3rd and 6s. That is when your quarterback needs to shine. And obviously, as we have discussed, the quarterback play was the worst we've seen since Quinn's freshman year. And that includes when Arch was in. He had the one good run. I don't think it's really fair to judge him off of 2 drives where he kind of unexpectedly got thrusted into the game. But to me, that is a quarterback stat, especially in this game. It's not like they were just running it and not getting a bunch of 3rd and 1s. It was a bunch of 3rd mediums.
And speaking on that, Jake, Quinn's confidence, Sark touched on it, saying Quinn's confidence comes from the team's confidence in him. I really like that quote. And the team, I feel, should be confident in Quinn. But if that starts to falter, then maybe Quinn starts to feel that too. Maybe there's been a shift in, man, this Arch kid is really good. And we would go into battle for him too. And I'm not saying they wouldn't do that for Quinn, but maybe mentally there's something within Quinn's confidence that is reading some other vibe in the locker room. I'm not saying this is a leadership issue, but benching him in that game was essentially just to refocus Quinn and say, look, man, essentially what we said in Saturday's episode, zoom out a little bit, get your bearings straight, look at what the defense is doing from a sideline perspective, and go execute in the second half. This is not a permanent thing, but we just need you to put your eyes on it from the outside looking in.
And it did help him. He unquestionably played better in the second half. It still wasn't to a level you expect from Quinn Ewers, but if he played in the first half like he did in the second half, Texas wins this football game. Uh, Even with him just playing really average in the second half, that's all they needed from him. The first half was just so bad. But I think Sark proved why that was a smart decision. I've seen a lot of people going, did Sark start a QB controversy? It's like maybe for your morning ESPN show,
Yeah.
but not within the team. And at the end of the day, Sark didn't create this. Quinn created it. He had 12 passing yards at that point in the game. Arch came in. They did put up more offensive yards in his two possessions than the previous 6 or so from Quinn. There was a reason he got benched. He deserved to be benched at that time. And I think Sark made the right decision by putting him back in, seeing if he could perform, and Quinn did perform better from that point. I think people trying to make this some bad decision by Sark are just completely off base and don't really have a finger on the pulse of this team. I trust Sarkisian a heck of a lot more than I do John 6, 7, 4, 5, 7, 8, 9, 10 on X.
Yeah. Jake, I'm going to clip what you just said about Sark and Quinn. About Sark did not create this controversy. Quinn did. Quinn created this controversy on with his play. Plain and simple. You play better, you play winning football, Arch never comes in. Arch isn't even thought about. He's an afterthought. Plain and simple. It's not Sark doing anything. It's the players on the field. You play to win the game, period. You have QB depth. A lot of teams don't have the luxury Texas has by having 2 really good, capable, winning quarterbacks. Why not? Why not throw in somebody who is capable of playing well against a Georgia defense who's your backup? What team in the country has that luxury? Not many. So you play to win the game. Sark put in what he thought was the best option at that point in time to win the football game. That's all I'll say about it, because I think Sark made the right choice. I don't second guess what he.
And it wasn't even I'm putting him in because I think Arch gives us the best chance to win. It was I'm putting him in because Quinn needs to take a breath for about 30 minutes, get him into the locker room, let me talk to him, let me calm him down, let me get the iPad out and show him some stuff that's going on and get him refocused. It's as simple as that, because at the rate, and I know Arch had the fumble as well, but at the rate Quinn was going, a pick 6 was definitely on the horizon. That was the only thing that was missing from him in that first half.
Jake, the leadership Sark talked about in the locker room, whenever he got into the locker room, he said there were already a couple of players, a few guys that were addressing the team. He said this was, even last year's team would have had one guy standing up and addressing the team. He said there were multiple guys that had stood up, addressed the team, were, giving the pep talk, letting them know assignments, letting them know everything's okay. He said the leadership team within this program is really, really solid. Some of the best that he's ever been a part of with any program. So I don't think that that's an issue whatsoever. He said going into practice on Monday at a very coachable practice from the players, he said spirits are looking high. And a lot of the players are going to the coaches and saying, hey, look, what do I need to improve? Let's watch some film. The players are taking the initiative, saying, that wasn't good enough football on my part. I'm taking accountability here. How can I improve? What can we do to be better?
Anthony Hill's quote after the game told me everything I needed to know. He basically just said, and I'm paraphrasing here a little bit because I don't have the quote in front of me, but it was, we're taking this L. We're going to go into the film room. We're going to learn from it, and we're going to get better. That is a winning culture statement. A losing culture statement would be a Billy Bowman from Oklahoma after the game going, we gave them everything. They didn't actually win that game. That's what losers say.
Yeah.
Anthony Hill said what a team that is focused on winning, they know that they played a bad first half, especially on the offensive end. They know that if they play like they did in the second half, they likely win this game. And they fought back. At the end of the day, the leadership showed to me by the fact that it was 23-zip at half. The offense had 30 yards, and they came out and they fought back. And this game was a one-possession football game going into the fourth quarter. It wasn't pretty. Texas played a bad game. Georgia's defense played excellent. Georgia's offense did not. And Texas was able to find a way to give themselves a chance despite the first half deficit against a very good Georgia team. And I still have just as high of hopes for this team, other than maybe feeling like winning a national title is going to be a little bit tougher than maybe we were thinking a couple weeks ago.
And not to say that we ever thought that winning a national championship was ever going to be an easy road to go.
No,
So
maybe just a little bit more improbable.
Right. Jake, let's go ahead and let's jump in. Are you fired up? Do I need to fire you up, or
No,
are you already there?
not.
You're already there. You're ready to go.
I've been waiting all day to talk about Kirby Smart.
All right.
Who's
well,
a
Jake,
much better coach than football or than person, by the way.
I can't even introduce him before he just jumps on in. All right. This is one of my favorite segments. Georgia fans, this is the moment you've all been waiting for. I might put in the description, just jump to 30 just to show some of our Georgia fans. This is one of my favorite segments. Jake, don't jump.
Kirby Smart was making me want to jump with his idiotic post-game comments. I mean, he was acting like he won the Super Bowl, trying to like go up to the fans and kind of dance around, like do the Texas celebration that the defensive backs were doing a few weeks ago. And then he has the nerve to, first off, we're going to go over a couple really stupid things that he said. But the first thing was trying to say the refs were trying to take the game away from him. And he's talking about the defensive pass. If you're talking about the targeting, that's on you for not teaching your players not to lead with the crown of their helmet. The rule is clear at this point. Sometimes stupid targeting's happening, but both of those targetings were obvious. They put their crown of their helmet down and led into the player with it. That is the definition of targeting. And also, you're going to paralyze a player if they're tackling like that, or paralyze yourself if you're tackling like that, I should say. So I'm not sure what Kirby Smart was meaning about that, which I guess he might have been talking about the defensive pass interference reversal, which, by the way, was the correct decision as far as the actual call goes, because that call would have been one of the worst calls in the history of any game I've watched. And I've seen some terrible calls. Mind you, the game against Alabama a couple of years ago in Austin, where Texas wins if the refs just don't completely screw Texas. That's called losing a team a game, not making the correct call at the end of the day. And then he has the nerve to say it was incredibly dangerous. First off, I do want to say this. Don't throw trash on the field. We're not Texas Tech. We're not Georgia, by the way, who did this in a SEC championship game 2 years ago. Did Kirby say it was dangerous and an atrocity then? Was he up in arms over his fans throwing trash in that game? No, he was probably bitching at the refs because he's a baby at times. Like I said, much better football coach than person. So he has the nerve to say that's incredibly dangerous. Meanwhile, his players are driving 120 miles per hour on the roads in Athens while intoxicating and assaulting their pregnant girlfriends. But yeah, some fans throwing water bottles on the field was incredibly dangerous. Give me a break. I mean, like I said, they threw trash on the field 2 years ago. They've had 12 players arrested since the terrible incident that took place a couple of years ago after they won a national title. So I don't even want to go through the total amount of arrest. The Georgia is the perfect example. They're a great football team, but the inmates run the asylum, and it works for them, and that's great. But I don't take back what I said if I wouldn't have Kirby Smart over Sarkisian, because at least the program isn't a joke as far as player responsibility. And then just his comments post-game. He's a winning football coach. He's a proven great football coach, but the way he talks sometimes, he sounds like a loser.
That was fun. That was good to hear. And I'm glad you got that off your chest. I feel like you really needed that.
Yeah, I've been waiting to get that all day. Again, great football coach. I'm not sitting here saying he's not a great football coach. Great football coach. Not so much person. And clearly, Georgia has culture issues as far as players being able to obey very simple laws, like not beating up your pregnant girlfriend and not driving 100 miles per hour while intoxicated in Athens, Georgia, of all places.
Yeah. I will say this about just the officiating in general. I have a rant on officials, and I've mentioned this to you. I commentate high school football games, and people have brought up to my attention that, man, why do you call out the officials the way you do? Sometimes you why are officials protected? Why are they wrapped in bubble wrap in high school, college, and the NFL. Why are officials never held responsible? How come coaches and 16, 17, 18, 19-year-old kids have to approach the media and talk about their terrible performance or their bad decisions on a football field? Or why does a student athlete have to address the media about a decision he did or did not make in a game that cost a lot of money on gamblers and things like that? But an official, a referee, they're 30, 40, 50-year-old men, 60-year-old men that have been doing the job for 30 some odd years. They don't ever get criticized or aren't allowed to be criticized. You get fined. Kirby Smart's going to get fined for what he said. Why? I don't know. It's okay to criticize. If the coaches get criticized and the players get criticized, guess what? There's another aspect to sports that affect the game. That's officiating. And I don't care what anybody says. Oh, well, you should have put it away in the first quarter and whenever you missed that opportunity. No, sometimes officials affect the game, period. And if I have the right and everybody, it's okay to critique a student athlete, whether that's at the high school level or college football level or a professional level or the coaching staff, the officials should also, who play a big part in the game, in the flow of the game, and now players' eligibility going in to the first halves of other games with the targeting rule, if they're capable of doing that, they should also be susceptible to any type of criticism following the game with no repercussions, period.
Yeah. And one thing I forgot about Kirby, because there's so many things to talk about with
There's a whole
issues
list.
they've had.
Do I need to put you on the main spotlight
I
again?
didn't mention. No. I just got one more thing for this clown. A week ago, he shoved Michael Van Buren on the sidelines against Mississippi State. He shoved another player. If Michael Van Buren punched him in the face, it would have been front page news. But because it's Kirby Smart and he's won 2 out of the last 3 national titles, he got a pass for shoving a student athlete from the other team on his sideline. So give me a break about incredibly dangerous because some water might have hit you. What? I mean, I'm going to stop, or I'm going to say some words that Rogue Media might not appreciate me saying.
Yeah. Jake, real quickly, before Makuba, we didn't really touch on this. His injury, not a season-ending injury. Good news for the Texas Longhorns. Good news for the program. Likely not playing against Vanderbilt. Going to use the bye week following the Vanderbilt game, kind of reassess where he's at going into the remainder of the season with the Florida game coming up, or Arkansas and then Florida game coming up as well. So just that's kind of what we know on the Makumba injury. And I would think it's Jelani McDonald's turn to step up.
Yeah. I mean, they have played McDonald a decent amount already in the season and just about every game. I'll be excited to see what he can do out there. I think he's a really promising talent, and this is a good thing about the depth they have at safety. Unfortunately, as we mentioned, the injuries have felt very targeted at position groups for the injuries they've had. So hopefully Makuba's back quickly, but I'll be excited to see Jelani McDonald get some extra time in. These will be very valuable snaps for him because he's going to be a key piece of the defense next year.
He is. And Jake, lastly, before we go, before we log off, I do want to give the Texas Longhorn fans some perspective on this game. The sky is not nearly as falling as much as you thought it was around 7:30, 8 o'clock p.m. on Saturday. Okay, that's around halftime. All right, the sky is not falling nearly as much as you think it might be. This Georgia team is really good. This Georgia program is really good. Georgia got a lot of defensive talent back from injury. They played full strength really for the first time since the Clemson game defensively. And guess what? They're 48-3 in their last 51 games, Jake. They've got 2 national titles. Texas isn't to that level yet. They're working their way up to that level. But this Georgia program knows how to win big games. They showed up and really they played their A game. They played their best defensive game, their best overall game that they had all season, but they played their best defensive game by far that they'd played all season for sure. And that's with Carson Beck throwing 3 interceptions. That's with a quarterback.
Game, you could argue.
You could argue the Clemson game because Clemson's now playing very good football, and they're putting up 30, 40 points on basically every single opponent that they've played up to this point. Now, none of those opponents have measured up to Georgia, but you could say the same thing about Texas, right? So Georgia is a really good football program. I don't think that you need to hang your hat on anything. If you're a Texas fan, look back to last year. Look how Sark responded after a loss last year in a much bigger game, bigger in terms of like Texas perspective, not national perspective. You've played the number 5 team in the country. You played, an SEC champion over 2 of the last 3 years, and a team who's won the title 2 of the last 3 years. This is a Georgia Bulldog program who's built on winning and performing in these big games. Texas is going to get there. The season is far from over. There's a 12-team playoff. You still control your entire destiny of getting to the SEC championship game because there are teams that you play against on your schedule, Texas A&M, one of them, Vandy, one of them, that you could, that you need to get through first to get on the way to an SEC title.
They don't quite control their destiny for the SEC, I learned. We actually want A&M to win this weekend. Because
LSU.
they don't play LSU.
Yeah.
LSU is not lost yet in the SEC, and LSU is starting to really get going. They're starting to look the part of a top team. And so ironically, we technically actually want the Aggies to win this weekend. That'd be the one caveat, but they essentially control their own destiny for that, and they absolutely control it for the playoffs.
Well, that and a lot can happen.
Yeah, and I did look at the box score just real quick for that Clemson game. They held Clemson to 188 yards of offense. They haven't been healthy on defense since. They got healthy, and then their defense looked really good again. It's amazing what happens when you're missing some first-round pick talent, and then that comes back. It changes how you look a lot, and also just the focus. You're much more focused when preparing for Texas than you are when you're preparing for Mississippi State.
Jake, real quickly, you put in a comment in our notes section, and I want you to touch on it. The Quinn Ewers is crossroad right now in his career. Discuss what's kind of going through your brain with that, and we'll end it with that. We're way over, but I'm having a good time with this episode. I think it's a good one. Talk about the crossroad that Quinn currently has. He can go this way or he can go that way with his career right now, and it is really going to fall on this Vanderbilt game, or a lot of it is going to.
Yeah, I mean, he's at a point now where you're year 3, you know this offense, you've shown you can perform at a high level, but the play has been so bad the last 2 games that if he does not kick it back into gear, he's probably going to lose his starting position. His draft stock could completely tank, and he could end up maybe being in a spot where he has to transfer at the end of the year. Now, that's a worst case scenario, but it feels like this is going to go essentially one of 2 ways. And the other way is he comes out, he plays much better against Vanderbilt, gets a bye week, does get to improve his health. I'm sure I know he's not playing at 100%. He basically said it after the game. And so the route I hope we take is, and I think we will take, honestly, I do think we will take this route, is he comes out, he plays a solid to good to great game against Vanderbilt. He gets that bye week, he gets healthy, and then he looks good the rest of the season. He gets drafted at the end of the year, maybe not in the first round, because I do think he's really hurt his draft stock in these last 2 games. It will depend the level that he plays the rest of the season, but still gets drafted fairly high and is remembered well as a Texas quarterback, depending the results of these games. And so it feels like it is at this point in his career. It's he's probably going through the most adversity he's ever gone through right now. It's going to go one way or the other. I think it'll go the correct way that we want it to go. I still believe in Quinn Ewers. We said a lot of negative things, so I do want to end on a positive note. I believe in Quinn Ewers. I think he is the QB1 for the Texas Longhorns this year. I think him playing at his level is the best way that this team can win a championship this year. And I'm going to believe in him until he is not the starter. And I hope that's not the way it goes. But we're going to find out here in just, a handful of days.
You're exactly right. And I would also, compliment those sentiments that you've just made, because I completely agree in every aspect. there might be a road where, and I don't know if this is the best road to take. This might actually be more of a detriment to the Longhorn season instead of him just being not great and then starting Arch and just rolling with Arch for the rest of the season, would be that he's playing good enough. I don't know if there is a route to take where he's playing just good enough to where you can't really bench him, but he's just playing meh. You're winning games. You're winning comfortably, but he's not there. He's not 100%. You're basically winning games like you did against Oklahoma. And once you get to the
which
playoffs,
is possible because of this defense.
Yeah. And I think not only is that possible, I think you would get into the playoffs with that. And then once you play a team like Georgia, you'll get a repeat performance like we saw on Saturday. So,
yeah.
All right, Jake. Well, I know that wasn't really ending it on a positive note, but again, that just popped up in my brain. So anyway, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for staying with us. It is a 45-minute long episode. These episodes are typically at 30 minutes. We appreciate you sticking around this long with us. If you did stick around this long, you should already be subscribed. But if you're not, please subscribe, like, share, comment. We appreciate all the support that we can get. We can keep giving you this content as long as that support continues. And we release these episodes Tuesday through Friday at 12 noon. And then we let the football dictate the episode on Saturday. We come out with an immediate reaction show following the game on Saturday. Again, a bunch of Georgia sickos tuned into our channel on Saturday, gave us a ton of interaction. We appreciate it. We love those fans too. They're also more than welcome to subscribe and jump in the comment section. Made it a little bit spicy. It was kind of a fun week following a loss, to be completely honest with you. But we'll wrap things up right there, Jake. For Jake Jimerson, I'm Tanner Carlson. This is your daily fix for all things Texas Longhorns right here on All In Horns, brought to you by Rogue Sports Network. And as always, ladies and gentlemen, hook 'em.
All in Sports Network. We love sports.